Earlier this week, Strymon announced this. It's an interactive PDF allowing you to quickly look up the secondary controls for all of their non-screen enabled effects pedals. And I do not begrudge them having done this. I actually think it's a great idea. For some time now, my iPad has really only served three purposes: camera controls, secondary controls, and remembering what the hell all the secondary controls across all of my devices are. And it's at this point that I want to say, while the Strymon announcement is the impetus for making this video, they are not the target of this video. This is putting all builders on notice. It's time to start labeling your secondary controls. But before we get into it, my name is Mark Johnston. This is Secret Weapons. This is a YouTube channel where we do gear demos and reviews, as well as studio tips and tricks for leveling up your writing, playing, and production from the perspective of a guitar player working at a studio. And if that's something that you would be interested in, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and stick around for future videos. So today's video is a little bit of a rant and an open letter to all of my favorite pedal companies. As somebody who's known for covering some of the more ambitious and esoteric devices in this industry, I have to hold a lot of this information in my head frequently, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it is not easy to do. Remembering global controls, secondary controls, and primary controls across multiple devices, across multiple design aesthetics, across multiple brands is a lot to undertake. It's the reason my iPad's book app is just awash with nothing but PDFs these days. I basically have nearly every PDF for every single pedal from Chase Bliss, from Strymon, and from Maris saved on my iPad for quick reference so that I'm not constantly Googling or trial and erroring my secondary controls. So there's a couple things I want to lay out in this video. Number one, this is not an ask for global controls or every single parameter to be printed on the face of the pedal. But I do think that we are well past due for secondary controls being labeled on the face of all devices. And to be fair, I know some of the brands know this as well. It's at this time that I want to shout out Hologram Effects because they've been labeling their secondary parameters since the jump. The microcosm has all the secondary parameters labeled on the face, and they've been doing that since as far back as the Infinite Jets. So, Hologram, you are not a part of this video. Well done, no notes. I do want to be clear that I am grateful that the other brands are playing catch up to Holograms ahead of the curve thinking there. Obviously, the impetus of this video was Strymon releasing the interactive PDF for all of their devices' secondary controls. But as a company that doesn't do a lot of art on the face of their devices, I don't think it would take much to just start secondary labeling everything. Strymon, it's time for a facelift. And one of the strengths and weaknesses of Strymon's secondary control scheme is that a lot of the controls relegated to secondary status are somewhat tertiary. They tend to be things that you would treat more as set and forget, like tape bias on the L cap or pre-delay on the flint. The problem with those secondary controls being less commonly used is they fall out of your head quicker. When you don't have to reach for it often, the muscle memory goes away, meaning that every time you do need to change the amount of crinkle in the L cap, you have to look it up again. The next target of my ire, and one of the devices that needed this the most, is Maris. And to be fair, they were slightly ahead of the curve when it came to rectifying this issue, but they really had to be. Maris is one of the most inventive device manufacturers in our space. Their small format pedals are some of the most capable and intricate devices we have, and I love them for that. So much so that there is no hold down 2-foot switches and turn a knob to get to secondary. You have a straight up alt button that you press and hold to make those changes, which makes it all the more egregious that devices like the Enzo have their stereo delay system, the different filter types and resonances all relegated to secondary controls. Honestly, a lack of knowledge about the secondary controls on the Autobit and the Hydra make them borderline unusable. But a couple of years ago, Maris started selling overlays, kind of clear plastic face plates that can go over top of the pedal itself, giving you access to all of the secondary controls and their positions around the knobs, which I quite like. I have the first run for my Enzo, and it's not great, but I did see the new overlays at NAMM this year, and they're actually pretty nice. So if you are somebody who has been using and struggling with secondary controls on the Maris stuff, this is your notice. You can go buy clear covers for those devices that will give you on the face information that is crucial to using almost any of their small format devices. Though to be fair, that really does reinforce my feeling that that should just be printed on the face by default. I mean, the Autobit Junior is a device where each of these 6 knobs is a step in a sequencer, and to not have those demarcated out effectively makes that sequencer incredibly hard to use. And lastly, one of my favorite brands whom I love dearly, but is going to draw my ire the most in this video, we have Chase Bliss. If my memory serves, the Mood Mark II is the device that kind of introduced the secondary control format to Chase Bliss pedals. This is the first thing that really gave you access to that press and hold both foot switches and make additional changes for incredibly deep and inspiring control over what, to this day, is one of my favorite effect pedals on the market. And it's absolutely one of the devices that needs secondary controls labeled on the face more than almost anything I own. Things like tone control over the wet effects, things like blending between the 2 effects. You have things like the ability to fade the micro loop, to solo either the left or right channel to the spread dip switch on the top, a tone roll off, the ability to sync and desync the 2 effects to each other and to MIDI clock, and stereo widening. There is so much you can get out of this device that just kind of falls into the ether if you don't have access to or the ability to kind of like hold all the additional information in your head. Then came Lossy, and I was all aboard the hype train for this new era of Chase Bliss because this has all of your secondary parameters labeled on the face of the device. Great job, 10 out of 10 Chase Bliss. No notes. And then the Onward came out, and you have sensitivity, balance, duck depth, and the user set fade all labeled on the face of the device. But that's not all the secondary controls that this thing offers. What are we doing? Guys, we need to talk. And the Clean is now really living up to its name by having no labels for secondary controls, I guess. It is 2025, effect pedals are complicated now. We're all on board with it. It's time to start labeling your secondary controls. This is not about globals. This is not about disabling and enabling MIDI clock or changing MIDI channels printed on the faceplate. This is if you have an important tone control or delay time or regeneration or mix or an important piece of routing, label it on the face. We are all on board for the complexity. We just have to have clarity. We've been grading on a curve until now, but from here on out, if I'm reviewing a pedal and you don't have your secondaries printed on the face, you are losing points for that. Rant over.